One batch, two batch, penny and dime, true believers. We're gathered here not to talk about a defender or even an avenger, but a punisher, one could say. That's right. We're doing a deep dive into the most brutal of the Marvel Netflix shows about the lone survivor of the Central Park Massacre, who got his big break in Daredevil Season 2, where he declared war on the scum of New York who killed Frank Castle's family, making new friends and some messed up enemies along the way. So let's crack open our war journals and start Pondering the Punisher.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Dragon. So thesis statements out in the open before we get started.
Sure.
All right, folks. This is going to sound very unpopular, but Dragon knows this, and this is a podcast that I've been kind of dreading. I am very indifferent about this show. And here's the thing. Unlike Iron Fist, that I actually have some strong opinions about, and I actually like certain parts of it. You know, go Ward. But unlike Iron Fist, Dragon, this show is just. Here's the thing. It's competently made for sure. It's well acted. It's yeah, that's about it. It's competently made and well acted.
That's all you can muster.
That's about it. Okay, here's the thing, Dragon. This is like the definitive example I can think of a Marvel Netflix show that really shouldn't be 13 episodes. That's the main problem I have with this. I mean, this season drags. That's basically my thesis for it, Dragon. It's just kind of like I don't know. I mean, there's certainly good parts to it that we'll get into, but I gotta say, out of all the Marvel Netflix stuff, this is definitely, it's not the worst. I mean, obviously Iron Fist season 1 is the worst, but it's definitely the one that I've got the least amount of emotions on. And from a podcasting point of view, as a podcaster, Dragon, honestly, that's even worse than Iron Fist in my mind. Like, not having an opinion about something is worse than like, oh my god, this is a hot train wreck, but I like that Ward guy. All right.
Sorry, it's the Ward thing is cracks me.
Oh, I know it does.
All right. So my thesis on the Punisher briefly is that you gotta remember. So the Punisher, there's to reflect here for a moment, just kind of work into my thesis here. So of course the Punisher, one of the breakout stars of Daredevil season 2. The last, and also something to note about the Punisher is the last show, for all intents and purposes, unless something really monumental changes in the foreseeable future. For all intents and purposes, Punisher is the last show of Marvel Netflix. As in, at the maximum is we have six different series on Marvel Netflix. If you count Defenders, which is more of a mini series, and from what I hear, not likely to get any more installments, but never say never in regards to that. That one just depends on the views of the other seasons. So the point is. Roughly, Punisher was kind of the last one out of the gate, and I got to tell you, on the whole, I'm glad that Punisher made the cut. I really am, because Punisher is kind of the Punisher was a niche character that people liked for kind of the Punisher was a character that was huge in the '80s, because it's like kind of the '80s was the rise of the vigilante, of kind of like the kind of the Watchmen era of like heroes that go the extra step, kind of your Wolverines, your Frank Castles, your Rorschachs. Like that was kind of the era that he was really bred into since his appearance in Spider-Man in I believe '74 onward. And this show, I feel again in the years that have spawned from the '80s onward with the Punisher. The Punisher's gone. Tiki, I could spin you a yarn. I'm going to spare you here, but let me just tell you. Punisher is one of those characters that has the most weirdest and eclectic history in Marvel Comics history. And I feel that this show kind of very, very accurately reflects kind of the best of the Punisher and storytelling. I really do feel that it captured the feel of the Punisher comics when they were at their best, and I do feel like there's room to kind of explore more of the Punisher and kind of get more in there. But I think they did a really good job. I think they did kind of too good a job in kind of capturing a character who's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And by the same token, it's a character that there is a limit to how much Punisher you can really take. As we saw with Daredevil,
And Dragon, honestly, I think that's where I'm at. That's honestly where I'm at right now. To me, there's a limit to especially with the plot of this show essentially taking place, after he does the famous arc that the Punisher is known for, which is getting the big revenge on his family, after. And so for me, it's like, how many episodes can we really drag out Frank Castle just brooding? I don't know. That's what this show kind of comes down to for me, unfortunately.
all I'll say is that I would say they've continued the momentum of making me care about Frank Castle and his journey of kind of being the Punisher and all that implies. So I think I think did a good job.
I just think that it's not that this isn't. I mean, I can't say it's compelling to me. The stuff with Daredevil season 2. I don't know. I feel like for me, Punisher is more of a character. Like, don't get me wrong, Dragon. I was like right up there with you wanting a Punisher show. And I'm glad that you, as more of kind of a comic guy, like it so much. I really am. I want to just put that out there. I'm not saying like anyone who's like, I'm not saying anyone's like dumb for liking this show or anything. And I like the show. It's just not. It's anyways. I think we've kind of established our viewpoints on it, Dragon.
All right.
Okay, so let's get into the plot.
Yes. Okay, folks. Now, of course, traditionally, with something like Daredevil, we kind of we kind of dedicate a podcast per episode. But in this case, we're doing an overview, kind of like we do with Iron Fist. So, the plot might be a little lengthy in this case. We're going through a whole season.
Which, honestly, that's going to probably be the status quo going forward for Marvel Netflix stuff, just because, for scheduling reasons and a lot of other stuff we're doing, we just really don't have the time to go episode by episode on these things.
But again, Daredevil, well, we'll make an effort for Daredevil.
Daredevil is an exception for sure.
I mean, we gotta get our Wilson Fisk,
Yeah, Daredevil's the exception, but I'm just saying in the immediate future with the season 2s of some of our shows with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, that's how we're gonna approach it.
I mean, the only thing I could figure is if, again, by some miracle, and my fingers are crossed here, genuinely, unless we get like some new radically awesome new shows coming out of Marvel Netflix that might change our opinion on that. But again, we gotta, fingers crossed. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's the plot in a nutshell, in a very large kind of skull spray painted on nutshell. Here's the Punisher, season 1. So the abbreviated version. So essentially, Punisher kills the last of the gangs who gunned down his family, and he retires until Micro draws Frank out to kill the CIA men and soldiers who orchestrated the Central Park massacre that killed his family. In doing so, reuniting Micro with his family that he's been monitoring while he's been in hiding after faking his death. Meanwhile, Department of Homeland Security agent, Ina Madani, is also investigating the corrupt dealings in Kandahar that Frank's unit was involved in, that we alluded to in Daredevil Season 2. And this goes... As this goes on, Frank's Marine buddy, his old Marine buddy Curtis, deals with an unstable young veteran by the name of Lewis Wilson, who's having trouble on the return home, returning home from war, from combat. And the deeper the investigation goes, the more brutal and devastating the stakes get as Frank comes to learn that his best friend, Billy the Butte Rousseau, was involved in the conspiracy to kill the Castle family and working against he and Madani now. So after Punisher goes public again, he had faked his death. He had actually faked his death this time instead of just lucking into his death being faked. He's faked his death, but now he's gone public to save Karen Page from Lewis Wilson's terrorist attacks. Things intensify, which leads ultimately to Frank getting captured, tortured, culminating in a showdown between the Punisher and Billy Rousseau on the murder-filled merry-go-round that is Frank Castle's life. And that's the show. That's season 1 in a nutshell.
All right, so Dragon, I think there's one thing that we have to do right now. All right, let's be.
What? Yeah.
Let's be frank here, Dragon. Let's be frank. I just love the punniness of this title. I love me a good pun, Dragon. So, of course, let's talk about Frank's arc here. And Dragon, like I said, it's an interesting place to start off where it's like we're essentially ending off at the end of the big thing that, basically all the Punisher movies kind of go after, which is like kind of Frank's, kind of journey for revenge. And it's an interesting way to start.
You know what I find really interesting? I find it so interesting, and again, something kind of we'll get to when we get to kind of the big highlights of the season, but we should definitely touch on with Frank here, is that amazingly, the Daredevil season 2 and this season, it's like we do develop Frank, and but we kind of get him to the same place of like it's him coming to grips with the fact that he is now the Punisher, and that Frank Castle is kind of becoming a fainting memory. In this case, Frank Castle is he realizes that he's more Punisher than Frank Castle. And again, it's literally the same arc as Daredevil season 2 with him, but it's like I don't know. It feels like they kind of
interest a little bit, I guess.
It doesn't bother me though, because I think they kind of pull a rabbit out of a hat on this. We're like, oh my god, they did the same story. They kind of pulled the wool over my eyes, yet it still kind of worked for me.
It's a good Hangover Part 2.
I suppose, but it's like, yeah, that's the thing. That's the weird thing. It is kind of it's somewhat the same story, but again, I think they told it in a compelling way for me here, where it's a fascinating arc of.
It's kind of funny that I think a lot of the arc with Frank is actually him sort of learning to open up to people again, especially through the, as we're going to get to his allies soon.
Well, sure. And that's a very good point that, yes, that's the thing. I think it's the same arc, but we have a lot more interesting kind of things that get him from point A to point B. Not that there were uninteresting things in Daredevil season 2, but I mean, I think we have, it's like we took the same like point A and point B, but we added all these fun layers and kind of fun lessons that Frank learns along the way getting there,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating arc of like the way we start this off here, where we start off with Frank in this season of like, what if the Punisher? So we got kind of all of our Punisher stuff out of the way up front in the first episode, like the first couple minutes of the season. It's like, okay, that's what we built up to at the end of Daredevil season 2. He's wearing the skull. We earn the skull like we earn the costumes in the Netflix shows. He's killing people in various ways. He's driving the van.
And then basically in the first 15 minutes of episode 1, it's like, nope, skull's gone. Fuck you.
But it's like you got what you want.
I don't think that in a bad way, Dragon. I really don't, honestly. I do kind of like the boldness of that choice.
But it's this bold story of like, what if the Punisher he's gotten his revenge, and he's killed the 3 gangs. We saw him kill all the Irish in.
Oh God, Dragon! Oh God, I just realized this is probably why you like it so much. All right, you ready for it?
What?
It's Megamind.
I don't know about that. But I'm totally wrong. I love Megamind like the day is long.
I know you do. And Megamind's, quite frankly, another DreamWorks movie I'm a little bit indifferent on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, you really like Megamind?
Yeah, I'm a little. It's not one of my favorite. I think let's just say it's a notch below the How to Train Your Dragon movies, I guess.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon's really impressive, so yeah. I mean, that's fair. All right. Anyway, what was I getting at? Oh yes. So it's like it's a what if. Okay, so Punisher, he's gotten his revenge. Now what? What does he do after he's gotten the revenge on the Irish, the Dogs of Hell, and the Cartel? Which again, we saw him kill the last of those 3 gangs off here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we see that he's driven not just by anger and his code, but I think we kind of flirt with these really good ideas in this season where it's like violence. And I've kind of heard this brought up, and I absolutely agree with this point, that I think what they're kind of showing this season is that violence is how Frank remembers things now. That's how he remembers his family. And that's how through this great sheer violence that he just can't escape. Like that's the way that he remembers his family, especially in that scene where he's getting tortured. It's like how him being on the brink of life and death, and playing judge, jury, and executioner, and doing all these horrific things. That's his form of punishing himself. Is how, again, when you're punished, and forgive me if this is on the nose here, when you're punished, you're forced to ruminate and kind of reflect on your actions. And that's how he reflects on this family, his self-punishment of you got your family killed. But he gets to remember his family by subjecting himself to all of this horrible stuff.
Sure.
I find really interesting. He's in this perpetual state of trauma and guilt over, and something I really like that again I forget if they were flirting with. It was more. We had a bit of this in Daredevil season 2. We really did a lot of it here. I really like that. We did this. One of my favorite runs of the Punisher. Bear in mind, I'm not a huge. I don't know everything about the Punisher, but I've read certain story arcs. I've read a few of the big famous story
To
arcs.
me, the more, again, it's kind of ironic how my experience with the Punisher in the comics mirrors the Marvel Netflix stuff, where like I prefer when the Punisher is in another person's story, and the some of the side stuff I've read, granted, I haven't looked into what is the stuff to read with side Punisher stuff, but I haven't been impressed with some of the like basically I have a Marvel Essentials book on the Punisher, kind of a random one. And I don't know, it doesn't really grab me as much as like Punisher versus Spider-Man does.
Let me let me put it like this, Tiki. If there's ever one story of the Punisher, like the one I'd recommend, like again, your aficionados will easily say, read Welcome Back, Frank," and that's a great story. Don't get me wrong, that's Garth Ennis. That's the
I've
guy who
definitely
kind of.
heard about that one. I haven't. It's definitely one I should check out.
And there's a lot of Welcome Back, Frank in this season. Of course, we even have the line in this season, so we got a lot of that. Don't get me wrong, that's great, and that's kind of like the top tier. Like whenever like people tell you like read this in something called Punisher Born, which is also good. That's about his in overseas in Vietnam when we basically killed corrupt soldiers. That's kind of the gist of that story. But the one I'd recommend is Punisher Max. It was like the most recent line of one of the most recent lines of Punisher Max, and they basically titled each section of the story like Punisher Max Kingpin, Punisher Max Bullseye, especially Bullseye. Tiki. Oh my god, that's the Bullseye I want to see in Daredevil. Basically, the Marvel Max stuff is kind of my barometer from some of the stuff I like. It's like really dark. It's out of continuity, as in it's kind of like it's like an Elseworld stories. And okay, what without changing the status quo too much? It's like what if we reintroduce the Kingpin? What if we reintroduce a really sick and twisted version of Bullseye, and the Punisher was just kind of like making his basically going up against the Kingpin for the first time and going up against and the Kingpin hires Bullseye to take him out, and like stuff like that. It's really good.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm getting at there is that whole story, the crux of that sort of the running narrative through those, it's like 3 or 4 chapters, if you will, of like Kingpin, Bullseye. He goes to prison at a certain point, and then he basically is homeless for another second. I believe it's like 4 sections in total. I think those are the 4 sections. My point is, the running narrative through those 4 sections, especially the Bullseye segment, is what I really got a big kick out of this season. One of my favorite ideas with the Punisher that Jason Aaron came up with, which it seems like they're tapping into this season, at least that John Bernthal is tapping into, is that Frank Castle's biggest form of guilt is not the fact that his family dies. The fact that when he was home with his family, his mind was still elsewhere. He still kind of wanted to be back overseas. His mind is still at war, and he just wasn't giving his all as a family man. We kind of touch on that a little bit here. That's where kind of the guilt is coming from, that he wasn't fully back. And again, we saw that in Daredevil season 2, where he regretted not playing with his daughter a little bit more. He regretted like kind of these moments where
Of course,
he wasn't.
the penny and dime thing.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. That's all kind of in that Jason Aaron vein that I'm digging so much with the Netflix kind of Punisher.
Okay.
So let's see. So one of the cool things this season with Frank is that he kind of gets an opportunity of redemption to a certain point where he's trying to. One, he's living. I love it, and we see the dichotomy between the Punisher and Frank Castle. Like, this season is the death of Frank Castle. It's basically the Punisher realizes that Frank Castle is dead. Where we showed that he was transitioning into the Punisher, and this is the Punisher realizing that Frank Castle is dead. That there's no going back to Frank. Frank Castle is a fleeting memory. That he's living with the mistakes of Frank Castle, the Marine, the human being. Is that Frank Castle? We see he was involved in some shady stuff in Kandahar, and I love that. That he's dealing with that this season. It's like a layer of like, okay, we think, okay, he's always been the Punisher. He's only killing the bad guys. But what if you, under orders, killed a good guy? That would be really complex. And I think we definitely see him dealing with that. And he's kind of finding some form of redemption, not only for the mistakes of Frank Castle, but the human side of Frank Castle having lost his family, where he's saving a family. He's taking he's taking back an unjust murder with the Marine, and he's saving a family like the one that he lost with in saving Micro's family, which I thought was a really it's kind of a great form of like kind of his self punishment is trying to correct the mistakes of his past. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry, I'm trying to think if there's anything major here. Like, but what about by the end of the season, Tika? Like anything in particular?
I mean, honestly, I feel like it gets a little more interesting by the end. It's kind of more certain moments that really stick out to me, not necessarily. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of, and here's my problem with the season, Dragon. And again, I'm kind of struggling to talk about this because I know we have a whole section for cons, but my problem with the season is that it feels like such a slow build to that acceptance, and for such a long time we play with the whole idea of, like, oh, Frank might find this new family again, and then by the end of the season it's like, nope. And so at the end of the day, I kind of feel like, and again, I'm kind of struggling to find things to talk about Frank individually and not related to other characters. So I think we should probably just move on, honestly.
Well, real quick, let me piggyback off what you're saying, then we'll absolutely do that. Just
Okay.
let me kind of hit my notes here. So, big thing I want to hit on with what you just brought up is that by the end, I think Frank, he's the thing that kind of hit me on a rewatch is that Frank is alone while he is not alone. He's despite having a surrogate family and friends with Micro's family. Again, he saved the family, therefore he's kind of welcomed into a family. And we saw that he had these friends that we're going to get into. But by the end, again, Frank, more so the Punisher, is still alone. Like this season, we kill off all of his unit. Like they're pretty much everyone that Frank Castle knows by the end of the season. Like all the Marine buddies, with the exception of Curtis, I suppose, is dead or a horrible person or horribly
Season
mangled.
2 is going to be the Curtis Goes Bad season, Dragon. Forget about Jigsaw.
Well, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to blow your mind with something about Curtis, but
oh dear. See, I know nothing, Dragon. I know next to nothing.
Yeah, I found that kind of interesting. That I mean, and again, in proverbially killing Frank Castle, we've killed everyone around him. Therefore, he is alone, and we end this. The ending with Frank going to the support group meeting, I think, is very important. I thought that was the most interesting thing on the rewatch to me, is that we end the season with, it's kind of like a glass. It's kind of, so it depends on how you interpret it, because it's kind of like a half full, half empty situation where he does attempt to go to the support group, and that is hopeful. You have a hopeful ending with the Punisher. I read it as hopeful at the ending, that the Punisher ultimately is going to go on an ongoing crusade. We kind of know this as the character. So we kind of know that's the tragedy of the character, that if he's just left with the Punisher, well, then he's just going to keep on going. But there's the positive outlook of it is, well, could Frank be retired once again like he was at the top of the season? He tried to retire. It's like, okay, well, I've killed everyone responsible. And Frank, at the end of it, we have this great scene at the support group where he's saying, like, hey, I've never thought about what I was going to do next, and that's, to me, is terrifying. That's literally where the season ends, where he's the brave choice is to try to live as Frank Castle, but he doesn't know if he can do it. And again, I think evidence would suggest that he's going to just stick to being the Punisher, and that's going to be the tragedy of the character. But it's just that he's in that uncertain. It's like Frank is moving forward, and he has closure. This season's all about Frank getting closure. He's killed by the end of the season. He's killed everyone responsibly. We're not. I would hope, at least, we're not going to do another season where, hey, there's more people connected to the death of his family. I don't think we're going to go there.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of my reservations with this season is it kind of felt like it was a little bit tacked on, but I don't know.
But I mean, you see what I'm saying, though, as my thing here is that, again, I like that he got closure this season, and I like that's kind of where we ended off. That, again, where it's like he can do something for himself now if he wanted to. Just the question is, will he do that? That's kind of where we end Frank at the end of the season. Starts off, and it's kind of a full circle kind of retirement thing with him. Just the question, like, could a guy like this stay retired even if everything's settled? I mean, the odd infinite, like, everything is everyone's dead and buried. Like, there's no one else to kill. Like the Ozymandias thing with the Punisher, like, he's reached the end of the line. You've conquered everything. What now?
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next installment, then. Jigsaw pieces.
Who doesn't like a good puzzle?
Oh, God. You know what's funny, Dragon? It's like I like puzzle games like Tetris and stuff like that, but Jigsaw puzzles I'm not a big fan of.
I
do
love
like
Tetris.
Jigsaw the character, though.
I also love Tetris, but yes, Jigsaw is.
Oh, you're a Tetris guy? I never knew that about you.
I love
Nice,
Tetris.
nice. Awesome,
I'm
awesome.
not competitive or anything. I just
We
like
have
played the
another
game.
thing in common, Dragon, that we've never talked about. All right.
Yeah,
Anyways.
let's so we're gonna jigsaw pieces, folks. We're gonna hit kind of our bad guys, which really are specifically two people. You know,
Uh,
We got Billy Russo, and we got Agent Orange,
Rollins.
otherwise known as Bill Rollins.
Yeah.
Let's
Agent
start.
Orange is like Agent Orange is too cool of a name for Rollins, honestly.
I'm pretty sure they're pulling that from Reservoir Dogs, Tiki. I'm like 90% certain.
Mhm.
Let's see where to start here. So with Rollins, on the whole, let's address the Kandahar thing. Just kind of work from that with Rollins and Bill DeRusso. Let's just kind of approach it
Okay.
that way. So the Kandahar conspiracy. Again, remember, this is something that we had seeded ever since the ending of Daredevil season 2. Again, we met Schoonover, and we dealt with the blacksmith, the guy who orchestrated the deal that basically brought the three gangs, the Crossfire and everything, killed the Castle family. So we had Schoonover, the blacksmith, more accurately. We'd set him up and we mentioned this big business that went down in Kandahar. And the minute he mentioned this big business, Frank killed Schoonover, and he made sure that Karen didn't hear about it.
Mhm.
And we have it's Kandahar is this horrific thing. We really realize what's going on in Kandahar here.
I think it's one of the standout episodes of the season too.
Yeah, it's really good. It's this again. I just love it's kind of one of the things that gets the ball rolling this season. That again, our hero, our guy here. We see that Frank, his hands are quite bloody even before the whole like just killing bad guys question. Basically, before the whole, is it right to kill the bad guys or not? It's the whole like, oh my god, he followed orders under what we perceived as the collective good here, but he murdered an innocent man, and the Yanmar had perverses. He kills under these corrupt orders. He killed a guy, and what they're doing with these bodies, Tiki, is they're filling these bodies full of heroin. The heroin that basically they're making their money off of. They kill people, specifically soldiers. So when the soldiers get taken back to their families, Tiki, the heroin gets smuggled over the state lines without raising any red flags, which is clever and horrible.
Uh-huh.
I mean, again, that's a scummy villain right there. If you're gonna like defile the bodies of soldiers and innocent
But
people.
here's the thing, Dragon. Here's the thing. I feel like Rollins is like his actions are incredibly scummy, and the interesting thing about him is that he's kind of just a pathetic pencil pusher nerd at the end of the day.
He is. Now, let me tell you something interesting about Bill Rollins. So Bill Rollins is played by Paul Scholes, if I'm saying that right. I think it's Scholes. Paul Scholes.
Oh no,
Going into
like
this,
Schultz, Mandela.
that's what I'm saying. Like it's pretty much it's almost spelled like that, but
Dragon, I'm telling you, I'm convinced that when I was a little kid, it was Schultz. All right, that's all I'm saying.
I know. I thought it was Schultz too. Anyway,
right.
So Rollins here. So here's the thing. I went into the Punisher excited for Rollins because I love the actor who plays Rollins, Paul Scholes. Here's the ridiculously awesome thing because that this guy he plays the most likable characters on television. Sometimes he plays some of the most delightful characters. Like he was on the. Many people remember him as the priest or the father on Sopranos. That Carmela Soprano, Edie Falco, she kind of had a thing for, and they piggybacked that in a really good show, Nurse Jackie, where this is where the guy shines. Paul Scholes, he plays like the most likable. Nurse Jackie, Edie Falco's character, has the best taste in men. She has a husband and she has a boyfriend on the side, and they're both really likable guys. She has the great taste in men. And this guy's only. He's like the most patient, likable guys who kind of help supply some bad habits of hers, but he's a nice guy though. So going into the season, and he was also Mad Men, like a little memorable guest spot as a nice guy. So what he does here is he plays against type, big time here. He's the orchestrator of Operation Cerberus here. He's the orchestrator of all this bad stuff. He literally turned a blind eye to his men and basically used them as like kind of pawns to get the dirty work done without dirtying his hand. And of course, this is literalized in a big way, thanks to Frank. Frank just punched him so hard he basically broke his eye.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what Nick Fury's read on this scene would be like. Oh, been there.
God.
But But yeah, I mean, I like that in the end, with all this Kandahar stuff that Rollins is responsible for. I like that in the end, Frank's humanity is kind of what got his family killed, and that's the tragedy of it, is that he was like the most happy-go-lucky Marine of like always playing this guitar and saying, "Oh, I'm seeing Barry Manilow with the wife. Just gonna when I get home, we're gonna have a good time. Read my read my kid a bedtime story." This is he's talking about all this like when I go home. Literally, is in the show. Literally every time I return from tour, we go to Central Park and ride the merry-go-round. So they knew exactly where he was going to be, and that's the tragedy of it all, right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I love one little thing about Rollins before we move to the big Russo of it all here. Rollins, I love that Rollins is like the blueprint of a character that you want killed. Like, I wanted this guy to die so much throughout the show. They didn't disappoint when we ultimately killed Rollins.
No, that's a good point. He's kind of like the crossbones of the Marvel Netflix universe in a way.
And he is. I love how he's the opposite of the Punisher in every way. Tiki, you hit it right on the head with that. He's kind of the pencil pusher. He's the
Uh-huh.
in every way, because this is the guy who orders the murders of people. Where again, Frank's the guy. I love that in a way. I mean, don't worry, he's an opposite of Frank in every sense. Where by the same token, I love that Rollins and Micro are also kind of like the evil, good versions of each other. There, where again, they're both the guys who commission the murders, but in regards to Frank too, they're both the guys who orchestrate Frank killing people. But again, in very different contexts. So again, that's the interesting thing of Rollins is that he's everything that Frank Castle would hate in another person is the guy he wants to kill. But there's always like that one thing, like bulletproof glass is always something gets in the way.
Uh-huh.
He's just so nonchalant. He's just like so not nonchalant. He's just so monotone in a way. It's just like so. He's devoid of humanity, and yet he's the guy getting the intelligence award and everything. He's rising through the ranks. He's so corrupt. Let's talk about Billy Russo. Billy the Butte Russo.
Yeah, I wish I had more to say about this guy. I honestly just think it's like again, like a lot of other things in this show, Dragon, and that's kind of the frustrating thing about this show to me. It's very much a slow build, dude. Like, we don't even have a hint that this guy's bad until like, almost midway through. And I don't know, like by the end, it's definitely it's definitely a compelling scenario, but it's
Okay, let
it
me
is
ask
what
you
it
something. Did
is.
you know he was a villain going into it, or did you go in completely blind?
I mean, I knew that Ben Barnes was playing the villain, so yes, I didn't know who the character was. I didn't know about the whole Jigsaw thing, but I did know that Ben Barnes was eventually going to turn evil.
I wanted to again. I had seen Punisher Warzone, which I believe is my first introduction to the Jigsaw character, aside from I think maybe this Batman crossover once. It was Batman, the Punisher crossing over, and Jigsaw and the Joker were involved, and it was the point. So the Jigsaw character was the main villain in Punisher Warzone. He was kind of basically was kind of a Jack Nicholson version of Jigsaw, essentially an over the top '89 version of Jigsaw. And it was quite fun. And so the point is, I knew the gist of the story of Jigsaw, and I knew Billy Russo from that. So when this season I had like Billy Russo, I was like, oh my god! So I had that expectation this whole season. I was just on the edge of my seat, like, oh. So again, I think if you know one going into it, I think it kind of helps you a lot. We're like, oh my god,
Dragon, again, I feel like this is a situation where the series simply would have benefited from having less episodes because I do like the slow build. I'm glad that we do get to see a lot of him before he becomes the supervillain. And I am very much looking forward to him now that he is in supervillain mode. But as I said, I just feel like there's a good 3 or 4 episodes where the status quo with him just doesn't change. He's just kind of like buddy buddy with Frank, and Frank is kind of like suspicious, but going along with it. And I don't know. Like I said, by the end, it certainly ramps up, but it's just kind of like that's the thing with this show is it's you once described Agent Carter to me as having the pacing of like basically like 10 episodes of Agents of Shield in one episode.
essentially.
And Dragon, I wish that the Marvel Netflix stuff had that kind of pace to it. I really do.
Well, I don't disagree with your point. I'm just going to wait to really kind
Okay.
of dive into like
Sure.
specifics when we get there. But let me say this about
Like I
Russo.
said, man, I'm trying to stay I'm trying to save that stuff, but again, I feel like I'm kind of digging myself into a hole where kind of the only way to talk about some of this stuff is through that lens. So I apologize if I'm kind of going off book on this.
Well, let me say this about Russo though. Here's what I really like about Russo. So again, based on just the cursory knowledge, and again, the Punisher Warzone movie is pretty much just a bit of Jigsaw. Billy Russo is that in the comics tradition, the story is he's like a good looking mobster who Punisher he shoved his face through a plate glass window, scarring his face. That's the gist. It's real simple. He was a mobster. Clear cut. And Punisher Warzone does that story, just like it's a more horrific version of how he scars his face. Like he throws him into like a glass bottle thing. It's terrible in a good way. It's like, oh my god! I recommend them movies. Not everybody.
I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball.
So so what I like about this is though this is a completely different backstory for Billy Russo. It's a welcome backstory change because again the guy's a blank canvas practically. Is that what they did here is they reinvented him and they justified like why Jigsaw because Jigsaw is the arch enemy of the Punisher and you wonder why because the running gag Tiki is that Jigsaw doesn't get killed off. Like why would the Punisher have an arch enemy if he kills off all his bad guys? And that's the thing. This is the one guy, the miracle exception. Like this is like the one guy the Punisher's not killed. Traditionally, therefore, he kind of the arch enemy of it all there. And basically, what they did here is they justified why he's an arch enemy. They justified why is Jigsaw important, which I was so charmed by as I was going through. Like, okay, we gave him a backstory.
I do like all the Uncle Billy stuff that we get, kind of that whole second persona to him, and it kind of speaks to the like shattered family man thing that we have going on with Frank.
Exactly, it's like if Castle. Basically, I read I like that we did the usual thing we do with Netflix in the best of ways here, where we had. A reflective villain. So Russo, no pun. Well, of course, a bit of a pun intended with reflective with Billy Russo. We'll get there, folks. Is that he is a reflection of our guy here. I felt that if Frank Castle had no family and no if Frank Castle didn't have a family, but instead of a family, he had a tragic backstory because Billy his backstory is rather tragic. What they gave him here, where he essentially. And we do reveal this at the episode 8 mark, by the way, which I found kind of interesting. Don't get me wrong, it's not like the episode 8 in terms of like the best episode of the show, but it was kind of the episode 8 tradition of like, hey, let's get into the villain's head a lot. Mm-hmm. This is the one where he met his mother, where we learned that he was essentially his backstory is he was abandoned by his meth addicted mother.
I have a comment from Monkey that says, "Please tell me this is the Uncle Billy from It's a Wonderful Life." Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I totally undercut your point. I realized. I'm like meth addicted mother. It's a Wonderful Life. I'm terribly sorry, Brian.
So, my point is, Billy Russo's got this really tragic backstory. He was abandoned.
I'm so sorry, Drake. Yeah, really tragic backstory. Mother addicted to meth. Got it. Check.
And he was the reason. Basically, what we did here is traditionally he's called the Butte because he's a good-looking guy. What they did is like as a kid he was targeted by, while he was in a group home by molesters. Hence the Butte, and basically fought off molesters, and that again, that's so tragic. And your heart goes out to him. Again, they get a little bit of sympathy with this guy, but he does such horrible things, and it was like all that sympathy is kind of sucked out as the season goes on, so perversely. And of course, we have like these really creepy moments of how he just kind of gets under everybody's skin. Basically, what they do with Russo on the whole is that we made him the most intimate a bad guy could be in every way. Where it's like, hey, kind of the characters, kind of helping our hero out in Madani. It's like, what if he dated her and he was intimate with her? Like, oh my god! And then while he's doing that, he's like Uncle Billy. And I guess that he views life as. He views life as revenge versus kind of punishment that Frank is like. Frank views life as punishment. He views life as getting revenge for all the stuff that he's entitled to, all the bad stuff that he profits off of because he was, taken advantage of and abused so much in his life. And he ascends. Frank was offered a choice in the show. Frank was offered that choice of like, you could leave war, you can go home, you could just leave it all behind. It's like don't make any enemies here. Just kind of move on with your life. And Frank can't do that. While Billy, he moves up the ladder in teaming up with Rollins. He wants to He wants to be kind of a profiteer of war in a way, of the corruption of war.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a guy who started with nothing, and he kind of embodied this like if Captain America embodies the best of the American ideal. And of course, we really use the Captain American comparison with Nuke from Jessica Jones, with Simpson from
We
Jessica
got kind of
Jones.
blew our load on that one a little bit.
What?
I said we kind of blew our load on that one a little bit.
We did, but still, that was all the stuff in that first season was really cool, though, what they did with him, though. But yeah, it's I like that he's kind of the reverse of that idea here, where we have again, of course, Punisher, especially in especially in the Civil War comic, we see a lot of like the Punisher has a lot of respect for Captain America. Here, we have no inkling if that's true or not. We have no inkling of that here.
Right.
It's a fascinating look. Again, I think they're still borrowing from.
Wouldn't it be great if Frank Castle, like, buried under that tough exterior, was as much of a Captain America fanboy as frickin' Coulson?
I gotta tell you, in my own headcanon, Tiki, I swear to you, in my own headcanon, I'd like to think that, like everybody, he was like, pro Captain America when you joined the service. But I think he kind of went the kind of sort of the Vietnam route. I know he went to Kandahar, folks, just follow me on this. Like he went kind of the route that he started off with a kind of a Coulson mentality, but war just kind of slowly kind of desensitized him from the positive American ideal to kind of the like, oh my God, so it's a crap show everywhere you go.
I like that.
That's always my headcanon, unless they say something directly otherwise. Like if they say, oh, I hate Captain America from the get-go. If they do something like that. Like, Rogers, he's a pansy.
Well, we all know that's never going to happen, Dragon. They're never going to have a conversation that direct.
True. But yes, again, it's like kind of the perverse kind of American ideal we explore with Russo there. And again, it's like the thing with, I guess the last thing main thing I really have with Russo here towards the end is that I like that Russo is kind of the closest thing Frank has to a brother. Like they're brothers via war. War has made them brothers in combat, if you will. But again, he chose himself over a family. He chose himself over Frank, and led to Frank's family's death. Because again, he's very. He's always been on his own growing up. Therefore, he has no commitment or loyalty to anybody else or his family, given that he let somebody in and that person tried to take advantage of it in a really dark and depressing way. Therefore, this guy has built-in trust issues, and he tried to make something of himself with Anvil, the mercenary company. Again, he's a very mercenary character. Again, he's the soul. It's kind of like a Ronin samurai thing. Like he's a soldier without an allegiance, therefore mercenary.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry. Last thing is important though. With the mirror of it all, we got to hit this. Is that by the end of the Jigsaw arc, of course, basically when he turns from Billy Russo to Jigsaw, is that he receives the ultimate and appropriate punishment for all the stuff that he's done. Because as I said with the mother in the backstory and all that, though, he visited his mother, she was strapped down and everything, and basically tortures his mother on a regular basis for all the stuff that he was subjected to because of her. In the end, he's in the hospital bed like his mother, and punished for allowing other people to suffer. Frank, his mother, Madani, especially, for all the people that he's made suffer callously. Again, like he's suffering, and like his looks have been taken away from him. It's like, oh my, it's such a fit. Like I love the arc of Jigsaw, though. I mean, you're right, it does linger, and we'll get into the specifics of how it lingers. But at the end, though, you got to admit that's such a perfect.
I mean, it certainly is a badass final moment. That's for sure. I mean, it's definitely one of the most brutal moments in the Marvel Netflix universe.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that's a befitting punishment in a show called Punisher, I felt.
Yep, I can't argue with that.
All right, so I guess kind of does it for the kind of putting together the jigsaw pieces, if you will.
All right, allies in arms, Dragon. I don't believe we really went over a specific order for this. So why don't you take the lead on it?
Oh, we did. Let's start with Micro and the family first off.
Yay! I'm on top of things. So, okay, Micro first or family first?
Both of them, but Micro mainly. Let's focus on Micro. Bring up the family.
Okay, so Dragon, you're ready for a fucking broken record?
Oh God.
I like the Micro arc, but I think it takes a little too long to get there. I am not kidding.
Okay.
I am not fucking kidding.
Oh, I got you. I heard you the
first we spend too much time with them bickering at each other, but by the end of the day, it's like, you need to save my friend Frank. I'm like, I'm really invested in these two. But it takes a little too long, Dragon. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay, well, tell me this. What do you think of the performance, Tiki?
Honestly, I'm not over the moon about it, honestly.
I found
There's moments that he's good. Like I said, the big moment with Micro that I really fell in love with was the whole like, you need to help me save my friend Frank. When he acknowledges Frank as a friend, that was kind of like there's power in them words. You know what I mean?
there is a very Midnight Run quality to their friendship, where it's kind of the classic sense like these two opposites who are going through the course of things become best of buddies.
Uh-huh.
I think you definitely have that with Micro. And of course, Micro was one of the biggest things set up in Daredevil Season 2 in regards to the Punisher, because we saw that disc labeled Micro. It's like, oh my god, it's Punisher's sidekick. Ooh. And of course, in setting that up, I don't know if I told you this before. I told you Wayne Knight played Micro in Warzone, didn't I?
Get out. Get out of town.
Oh, he's really good too. It's like,
man.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, seriously, yeah, check that movie out.
Dawson! We got Dodson here. See, no one cares. All right.
Okay. So yeah, Micro, I found him to be likable and very handy. And again, he's kind of the, I get in some way, he's sort of the kind of an Alfred to the Punisher in a way. He's kind of the more sardonic, more kind of a building friendship version of Alfred. Like, what if Alfred had met Bruce like in adulthood and they had the kind of bond with him then? It's kind of that kind of dynamic we have going on between these guys. And Micro is the NSA Connect, and basically in a way, and now barely anybody brings this up. Micro is in some. The amazing thing is that Frank and Micro become friends, but Micro is somewhat at fault for the death of Frank's family. Because Frank lost his family because of the video. They were covering their tracks by killing Frank because they thought Frank sent Micro the video and Micro had sent it up the chain. All that. Mm-hmm. In doing that, Micro is somewhat, again, not like the direct cause because he didn't make the video. He just sent it to the proper authorities. Well, before that got corrupted and before everything went to crap for him. But, I thought that was so interesting on a rewatch. That, oh, my God, Frank, he's going to befriend the guy who kills family. We're never going to have that obvious conversation. Like, it's all your fault because we got all that out of the way with, like when Frank meets Micro, he thinks that he has a sinister motive. So he basically doesn't torture him, but he holds him captive for a few days, kind of choosing if he can trust him or if he has to kill him or something.
Yeah.
And again, he's in the position like Rollins was of pointing the gun that is Frank. Yet by the same time, again, there's that contrast and that distrust between them that develops into that friendship. Yeah, Micro's like he's this well-meaning guy. Like he's always like, "Come on, Frank, why can't we just work together here?" Like I think they kind of captured that. I think Eben Moss, Backrack, I believe it's the guy's name, Eben Moss Backrack. I like the actor, by the way. I thought he did a good job as Micro, and that he captured that well-meaning dialogue with the Punisher. Which, the way it goes is that Micro is the guy saying like, "Hey, let's." Basically, he's the angel, if not the angel on Frank's shoulder. He's like the guy saying, "Hey, if you want to kill them all, by all means, kill them all. Just stick with the mission and don't basically stick with the plan." That's what Micro is. He's the stick with the plan guy. In this case, we gave him a very compelling reason to want Frank to stick with the plan. In this case, his family. So let's talk about the family a little bit.
The family, I actually thought was a pretty decently placed storyline, to tell you the truth.
Oh, there you go.
Shock and awe.
Of course, family of three here. We got Sarah, we got Leo, we got Zach, and again, they're all on the whole here just collectively. There is the actress that plays Sarah here, the wife. I thought she did a really good job. Didn't like the world on fire, but I mean, good for what it was,
I guess my one issue with the family stuff is the fact that it's just we get a lot of Micro like watching, like it's a little bit too meticulous, but it's good. It's good.
Kind of like a painful thing for, again, an NSA guy to be in a position where he has to watch his family. That's the closest he can be to his family until he gets things sorted out.
That's the thing, Dragon. I feel like it's a good image. It's just maybe hit on a little bit too much.
That's fair.
To the point where it's like, all right, I get what you're going for here.
I like that, kind of Pete Castiglione, he kind of flirts with everything that Micro has lost. And, let me rephrase that. Through the guise of Pete Castiglione, Frank is able to flirt with everything that he has lost. Again, he's lost his family, lost literally a wife and 2 kids, exactly what Frank has lost. And I think in a good way. Again, there's a bit of a drawn out nature to it, of course, with in general with a lot of stuff in the show. But on the whole, I do feel that Frank, I like what they're hitting here because Frank does have a bond with each of these characters in this family, and we do kind of the obvious tropes. So I think we went about them in a smart way for the most part, like the whole kissing the wife angle, all of that. Like it's we didn't do like a long drawn out thing like where Micah was like, hey, I don't want to work with you anymore. It's just like he's just kind of sad about it, and Frank says, okay, get that out of your mind. Like we kind of cut through all of that. Like okay, we're being smart about this. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, this kind of drives the deal to again. I think getting his family back in some small way, and just the family angle of it, is what drives Punisher to make this deal with Micro to help him. Basically, I think the majority of why Frank's doing what he's doing is to prevent a family from being from getting killed. If the reunited man with his family, but Frank would never admit it until by the end,
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's finish. All right, yeah, let's go to everybody's favorite. Let's go to Karen Page.
I don't have a ton to say about Karen. I hate to say.
Shock and awe.
I know, right?
No, I don't mean that against you. I just mean like oh my god, Karen Page, America's sweetheart.
It's not that she's bad in the show. I just don't necessarily feel like she contributes as much to Frank's arc as she does in Daredevil. So it's one of those things where it's almost kind of like, she in this season, I feel like she's more just kind of along for the ride, whereas in Daredevil, there was like a really intense sort of like suspense to their dynamic, kind of like a, like she was kind of like riding the wire's edge just by talking to this guy. And in this one, it's a little bit like, yeah, sure, it's like the stuff that he's doing is questionable to Karen. But you know what I mean? It's like I feel like the tension has been kind of sucked out of the Karen and Frank stuff. And I get that. It's a natural evolution of where they would be. I'm just saying it's not quite as compelling as I want it to be.
Well, I found it that Karen is the one person that the Punisher trusts and cares about. It's like that's the Punisher's kryptonite. Aside from just ill-placed bullets, like his kryptonite is Karen Page.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the one thing he cares about, and I kind of noticed this. I heard this brought up, and I looked at it when I was rewatching the season. I think it's true that if you notice, Frank doesn't make eye contact with anybody except Karen.
Yeah, I could see that.
And ultimately, Micro he only makes eye contact with the people that he trusts. I think Curtis, Karen, and Micro by the end.
Uh-huh.
Which is interesting. I like that now. What is your read on Karen? Do you think Frank has any romantic interest in Karen, or do you think it's pure like a familial thing, like he wants to protect Karen?
Honestly, I feel like at this point, like romantic stuff is a little bit beyond Frank.
That's fair.
So I do feel like it's more of a perennial thing.
I buy that. I mean, that's the thing. I like that they walk a line with that, but again, it's not like in your face, so it's like it's not a problem by that logic. I like that. It's like the point is like that's the only family that he has. Like she's honorary family because of how she met him in Daredevil, where she was the connect that reminded him of his family.
Sure.
Remember, that's the thing. We have that beautiful scene in the hospital where he says like, "I like having you around. You help me remember them." Mm-hmm. I think Frank Castle's biggest fear that we've established, and I think we absolutely see here again, the violence is what keeps him alive, is that Frank's terrified of forgetting his family. And again, like the Punisher's clinging to Frank Castle in any way he can. The only way he can cling to him is remembering why he does what he does, which is sad, perpetually. And I get a sense that Karen's, Karen's open to the Punisher killing, but not as like a never-ending vigilante,
Uh-huh.
It's kind of what I feel like. Where again, Karen was open to the idea, which repelled Matt Murdock. Where Matt Murdock was terrified. Oh my god, how can you be for him killing people? What are you nuts? So I want. I think she wants Frank to move on with his life, like she did with Nelson and Murdoch. She became a reporter at the Bulletin. But I think it's not in the cards for the Punisher, and that's kind of the sad thing. Right? He's always going to be there for Karen, but I don't think it's in the cards for her to to kind of get Frank to change his ways. So let's get to Curtis. Basically, kind of like we're almost to the finish here with these guys. We got Curtis slash kind of any of the other Marines like Gunner, but mainly Curtis Hoyle here. So, Kurt, what do you think about Curtis?
I like Curtis quite a bit. I don't necessarily feel like they give him a ton to do in the series. But for what he is, he's kind of like I feel like it's interesting, Dragon. I was just watching the Blockbuster Buster review, and Erod makes a point in that review that Curtis is basically Frank's Claire, and that Frank wouldn't want a Claire Temple in his life. He'd want someone where he's kind of like very much rock solid, as you said. He like Curtis is one of the few people that Frank can actually look in the eyes.
Because you have to strap Rosario Dawson to a chair for a few days before he trusted her.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, God, that'd be an episode. But
she'd just be really ticked off at him. She wouldn't help him at all. Just be more fruitless.
But Punisher season 2, by the end of 13 episodes, Claire finally comes around to Frank, and Dragon, by the end of it, it would be a pretty satisfying arc, but it would take a long time to get there. Sure. Just like everything else in this show.
All right, okay, back to Curtis here. So,
all right.
Curtis, he's kind of like I think the Claire thing's right on the money, but at the same time, he kind of like read to me as he's kind of like, because of the whole veterans thing, because of the whole support group, it kind of reminded me a lot of Falcon from Winter Soldier. Falcon,
definitely, I definitely get a Falcon vibe,
and I love that vibe.
I say this in a loving way. He's kind of like Diet Coke Falcon.
Yeah, Diet Coke's valued by some people.
I mean, he's basically Falcon if Falcon was like staying an average guy.
In a way, yes. In a way, and I agree with that. I like that Frank. I love that with Bonds. I love how we reveal this. We reveal this during the big. Basically, we justified probably the most unnecessary story in the whole thing till it really gets amped up towards.
Yeah, we'll get there, folks.
I know, believe me. That's the one I'm gonna rant about that.
The bits for that one.
I know, believe me. If anyone's wondering why we haven't talked about that part of it yet, we'll get there soon. But I mean, yeah. Here's the thing. I love in the backstory that we reveal that Frank didn't kill a pregnant woman who was like armed with a bomb, and that's what blew Curtis's leg off and kind of ruined his life. And Frank's always felt guilty about that. I love that Frank showing humanity is kind of what kind of is why Frank trusts Curtis, and why he's like ingratiated and guilty over Curtis, and that's kind of what kind of built their relationship. And over time, that's developed into a genuine respect and like I think Curtis holds like a true blue Marine in Frank's eyes. Like that's the Marine he wants. The best version of Frank Castle is Curtis Hoyle, I think. Let's see. Again, this is like the one character who knew Frank longer than Karen Page in the series. Really, the only other character, because we established that. Well, not counting the only good character, not counting a Jigsaw.
Of course,
one didn't turn into like a backstabber to want to kill him. He cares about him. We had that great moment he confronted Mike, saying like, "Hey, you're using him to get your family back. But what about him? You're setting him off the chain. You're getting his hopes up. You're going to get him killed. How is that fair to him? Like, he's the only guy who cares about Frank Castle." And I think that's lovely. Again, like another link to Frank Castle. And I'm so glad that Curtis didn't get killed off. There is this tradition in the Punisher comics, well, honestly, more so in the media of the Punisher, which is kind of funny, where in each Punisher movie, we have like kind of a black confidant character for the Punisher, which is kind of ironic. No. I kid you not, we kind of have that each time, but this time we pulled a character from the comics, and interestingly, Curtis, he's that name is a bad guy in the Punisher comics, so there's a question if he's going to go bad in the future, and I hope not. I hope they don't do that.
I mean, if like one day he was like, wait a minute, I should be really pissed at Frank for what happened. Roar!
You gotta remember, he was punished for loyalty, but I think at the end, like, he's invited him to the support group. I mean, I think they're on good terms. I think they're gonna be. I'd like to.
Doubt about that. Sure.
Briefly, we had Gunnar Henderson. Basically, the only thing I'm going to say about him is that he was the guy who
made. You're going to have to remind me who the hell this guy even is.
He was very simple, Tiki. He was the guy in the woods. He's been there for like an episode or two. He was the nice Marine who basically made the tape to kind of reveal all the bad stuff that's going down in Kandahar. He was the guy who shot Frank with the arrow, then helped him out.
Okay, gotcha.
Guy in the woods with all the leaves.
Yeah, for sure.
The point is that guy, he was like another nice. He was a nice guy. He was a good soldier, and but he kind of represents the reclusive military side of the Punisher. So I like that each of these characters represents something of Frank Castle and the Punisher. And I think this guy represents kind of the Punisher side of things, where he's secluded. And if Punisher did not come out of hiding, he would have been Gunnar Henderson. And he died, and Frank felt very bad about that, and he definitely suffered some physical wounds from that encounter. So let's talk about big meat and potatoes here. Let's talk about Dina Madane.
Okay, this is where we're talking about Madani, not the.
Madani.
All right, man. Okay, so I said Curtis is a Diet Coke version of Falcon in a good way. Dragon, you know where this is going. You
Yeah,
know where this is going.
I gotta tell you, I'd hoped you were gonna save most of this, but we can get into it now if it helps you go on.
I literally have nothing else to say about Madani. I do not have a single other thing to say about Madani.
I had a feeling. It's fine.
Except she is Diet Coke Misty Knight, right down to the finest detail. And honestly, Dragon, you shouldn't have had me watch that Blockbuster Buster review because he lays it out perfectly. Like he brings up things I didn't even consider, like the comic relief partner getting killed off midway through.
Now here's the thing.
Dragon, that's it. That's all I gotta say. But Donnie to me is like a big fat old recycled, like, the whole thing you pointed out about, about Frank's arc being kind of a recycle of Punisher season 2, that I can live with, Dragon. That I can live with. That's done subtly, but Madani is just lazy, Dragon. She's just lazy.
I'm just seeing if I should explain it here. Well, I might as well. I'm going to get into it here. It's fine.
All right.
So here's the thing with Madani. So Madani's in a very interesting place where you absolutely, Tiki, you're right, but I would blame it on this. I think Madani was improperly sold as a Misty Knight where she shouldn't have been. But here's the interesting thing. So Madani is the oldest tradition in all the Punisher stories, Tiki. Madani is the oldest tradition that you have.
I mean, there's a couple cool things with Madani. Like, I like the one episode with the car chase. I mean, that's really about it. That's like the highlight for me, but...
I mean, here's the thing. I love all the scenes with Madani and Frank. Like, again, her dynamic with the Punisher is right on the money, and that's great. But when we do solo stuff with Madani, I'll get into more finer details when we get to kind of our Battle Scar segment. But what I want to touch on here is that here's the thing. Madani is in the tradition of the Punisher, where the Punisher always has that government character that's like, I don't know if I like this Punisher. Basically, that character's like basically the fugitive angle that I know you're familiar with from that Blockbuster things. Basically, that's the angle where you have that character who's called in to investigate the Punisher and who can't condone what the Punisher does. Yet by the end, of course, is in support, at least either in support or understands what the Punisher does. We always have this in a Punisher story, and I think they captured that. Again, with when Punisher is in the scene, they did that. And I think they did that either a little too well, or they mismarketed her as like, "Hey, we're going to be following this character like we did with Misty Knight." But because of that, because he comes after Misty Knight, that's all we're going to compare it to. Where again, she is that sort of we follow that character until we build to, hey, big Punisher scene. That's how those comics go. That's how the story goes. So it's kind of them following that to a T. But I still feel even with that. We spent too much time with Madani in places. And I have a big rant with that Madani stuff, which we'll get into. But let me say this. Here's the less Diet Coke Misty Knight, more Sam Stein, her sidekick. A lot of people say it's like Scarf, but here's my thing. I think Sam Stein is Bargain Bin Foggy Nelson.
I could see that. Bargain Bin Foggy Nelson.
Seriously, doesn't he feel like Bargain Bin Foggy Nelson? Like he's the guy who's just like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I didn't really. I thought the Scarf comparison was a bit of a stretch because there's much more to Scarf than comic relief.
That's what I'm saying, you know. So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I like that she briefly on the thing with Madani before we move on to the rest of it here. I think. Madani, I like the tenacity she has for getting justice for her partner. Again, it connects to the big kind of Kandahar thing with the Punisher, and I like that that Frank is the guy who shot her partner essentially, and that's why she she wants to get the Punisher, wants to get to the bottom of everything. That's Zubair, her partner. That's all. That's all great, and she's kind of this magnet for bad guys. That's the thing. She just kind of attracts all these bags, like her boss is corrupt. C. Thomas Howell, the Reverse Flash from the Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad Hell to Pay T. That was her boss, Carson Wolf, that guy. The one that shot Micro, that guy. Mm-hmm. She attracts all these bad. She attracts all these bad characters, and it's silly. So obviously she has a blind spot for Russo like Frank does, and by the end, She like Frank, I think she takes unnecessary risk, which leads to a lot of big dangers for her. Luckily, again, the Punisher in the end, I like the arc of forgiveness, where she forgives the Punisher after seeing what the guy's been through, especially being near tortured. She actually was tortured to death, then brought back. So literally, the guy did die for his sins. So I think that's enough to make somebody simpatico. So yeah, I think let's move on from.
All right, Dragon, we really got to pick up the pace
Right.
on this because we
I
got
think these
about
next
20
ones are going to
minutes
go
left.
by. I think these
Okay.
next are going to go by faster. So.
Okay, cool. All right, Marvelous Merry-Go-Round, Dragon. What did this show do exceptionally well?
You start us off.
Okay. You know, Dragon, I feel like this is a show of highlights, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's like there's really high highs in this show. You know, there's the as we kind of joke about, you know, the arcs, pretty much all the arcs in this show, you know, from Micro and Frank to you know, to Jigsaw and Frank and everything in between. It takes a while to get there, but the payoff is really good. So it does have really good payoffs by the end of it. You know, I feel like it does kind of like, I will say that I respect more than I enjoy. And you know, I say enjoy because it's just not my thing, but I respect the fact that this is a military driven show. I respect the fact that this is a show kind of catered to veterans. And that's kind of a unique thing, Dragon, even outside of the whole superhero MCU side of things. Just a show that's all about the veteran mentality is definitely something I can respect.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of strong performances. Bernthal continues to impress. I love what he does with his eyes. That's the thing I keep being enamored with the Punisher. You see, like, you get to see kind of there's something off with the guy, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Eben Moss, again, I thought he was great. Honestly, out of all of them, I agree that we take a lot of time to get to pay off certain arcs, with the exception of I think we take all the time we need with Frank and Micro. That's a dynamic I like seeing kind of unfold the way it does. Everything else I agree with you on. We got solid character parallels as per usual, like some of the Netflix stuff at their height. I feel on the whole, I feel like it's the best of we capture the best of the Punisher in terms of like what we're adapting. Again, there's a lot of Garth Ennis, who's kind of the godfather of Punisher, and Jason Aaron, like I spoke of before. I like that in my opinion, I think we get away with the conspiracy without convoluting the Punisher origin too much. I think we walk the line of it just like, again, unless we do it more, if we do any more of it, I think then it's overkill. I think we did just the right amount of it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Basically, because we have a clear cut and an ending to the Punisher at the end
Basically,
of the season.
we hope that it doesn't turn into like the whole Gotham, like, ooh, who killed the Waynes?
Yeah, that thing. Because I think at this point, it's like, because again, here's the thing, to ordinarily be like, hey, and there's more, but in this case, the whole season was built on the whole, you know, there were people who commissioned this hit, and it didn't feel, again, it felt like, okay, if you're going to cover up a crime, that's how you cover it up. So again, I could buy it, is what I'm saying. I love the next level storytelling with Punisher's trauma, like how we visually show trauma, the loss, the self-punishment, the flashbacks, the hallucinations to his family. I thought all of that was that's some of my favorite stuff in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 13, Steven Zurich, our big time director, the guy who does all the best episodes in Netflix shows, he directed the last one, so I was very happy with that. Memento Mori, you know, Remember the Dead, that one.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Big one, episode 10, Virtue of the Vicious. That was the big POV kind of idea.
Yes. To me, it's not necessarily the best episode of the season, but it is the most unique.
I think it's the best. As much as I love Steven Zurich, episode 13 is my favorite, but I think episode 10 is probably the one of the best directed. I think it's just really well conveyed. I love that storytelling. They have all these different perspectives. It's great. Again, basically, that's the big payoff to all Lewis Wilson stuff. That's where all the stuff. That's all the stuff I love about the Lewis Wilson stuff is in that episode.
I sense a segue.
Yes.
All right, let's get into the battle scars.
Oh yeah. So basically, we're talking about ordinarily we talk about all the great stuff the Netflix shows do, but you know, Punisher, it's a little complicated.
So honestly, Dragon, I feel like I know you have a speech about Madani, that's fine. I feel like we've beaten the whole, like, oh, the pacing is off issue into the ground. I don't really feel like we need to cover that.
Sure. Well, basically all my groups kind of feed into that, but they're mainly focused on the character, so I think we're fine. But yeah.
But let's start. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Dragon.
So Lewis Wilson.
Yep.
Okay, so Lewis.
Let me just start by saying I don't think this is a terrible idea for a character. It's just the
right?
execution is awful.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a drag on the season. It's the biggest drag on the season, possibly.
It really is.
Here's the thing, folks. Lewis Wilson, it's a good concept. It really is. It's reflective of Frank returning home, which is what his story's all about. Again, in concept, that's great. And we would pay it off with basically the big two-part story. Basically the point where, Frank's back, and basically the whole Frank saving Karen from Lewis Wilson. All of that's great. Like, that's great, and then the start of it is great, but then we just, all of this side plot, all of this time of like, hey, we see him go to the veteran meetings, like, this poor kid, he's going off the rails. I mean, it's not bad stuff, but it's like out of place. Like, why are we
It really, like, to me, it could have been a short film or even like a Punisher movie or something.
That's the thing. Like, here's my overall, all my gripes. Basically, they boil down to the big pacing issue. The whole season boils down to this big singular issue. Tiki said. Here's the thing. All of these are great Punisher stories, and it's like we're in a Punisher show again versus a Netflix show. In a Punisher show, as in just imagine if we were doing like a just in general, like, let's say it was on a mainstream television network, and you just had like arcs of Punisher episodes and Punisher stories. This would be fine. But if we're doing a Netflix show, we have to hit our marks and we have to kind of convey a singular arc, a big singular story for the season, without it feeling too arc.
Almost feels like the more the pacing of like what a typical animated show season would be like.
In play, yes, and with all these side plots, that's very much what we get a sense of. Where
or
again,
a serialized animated show, at least.
These are chapters of a Punisher story. We need to focus on our main story, though. That's the issue. Like our Russo stuff and this stuff, like that's our meat and potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the drags on the season, I feel, again, the Lewis Wilson, like the O'Connor stuff of the Lewis Wilson, like the veteran faking.
Don't get me started on O'Connor, dude.
That's what I'm seeing. You see what I'm saying? That to me that's the drag on the season right there. We don't need that. We just need the beginning of Lewis Wilson and the end of Lewis Wilson. Mm-hmm. That's all we need. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like that's not necessarily bad stuff. It just drags. With Madani, I already mentioned they missold Madani, and the soldiers missed where she should have been just kind of the supporting Punisher character, which is the conflict of them doing it too well. The relationship with Russo is.
Oh boy.
Here's the thing: it's the relationship with Russo is a creepy, aspired choice. I felt I respect that choice, but here's my problem: is that we linger on it too much, and that's again yet another drag on the season where I get what they're going for. Like we basically Tiki, they hit the horrifying punchline where they need to, like where she's in the bathtub after Russo has killed her partner, and then the same day she's traumatized by her partner dying in her arms.
Uh-huh.
Unable to tell her that Russo's the killer, and at the end of the episode, Russo's bathing her. Like that's creepy. That's the perfect note to hit. But everything else of like, she's just still dating the guy, and it's like, okay, well, we're just spinning our wheels a little bit here, just like reminding us, okay, I get that she's dating him. I get that she's made an error here. I get it. Just
I hear you.
Here's my Madani rant here.
Okay. Boy.
Okay, this is the biggest drag on the season.
Just remember, Dragon. Just remember time.
I just need a minute. That's all I need.
Okay, all right.
Okay? Biggest rant, very simply, is that Madani's family, her parents, are completely pointless. Completely pointless. As in her, here's the thing. I'll take, again, the Russo thing at least has merit, Tiki. The whole Russo relationship, again, they hit their notes with it. And they don't go back to it as much as I'm saying they do, but they go back to it. But the problem is, Madani, I don't need to know about her home life. Why am I don't care about her parents.
Right.
That's the thing. Episode 1.
Oh, man, I feel you so much on this, dude.
Here's the thing. Episode 1, 3 a.m. We love that episode. That's like a short. We forgot to mention this in the merry-go-round segment, but let's just quickly shout out here for my point. Is that 3 a.m., the first episode, is a short film about the Punisher. And it's a great, if we got no other episodes for the season, that's a great one-off. It's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that's a great, if they could do as a teaser episode, then did the rest of them, that also would have worked. I don't know, it's great. The point is that, in that episode, I rewatched that episode, that's great, but we have the scene with her parents, why? Get that out of there. Get that out of there. And, the only reason we establish her parents is that we have that one moment, and again, all the good episodes we keep having this moment. I don't know why.
How compatible we are on this again. This is like the moment of coming together for us.
It's like, here's the baffling thing. It's like episode 12 and 13, the best episodes of the season. It's like the only reason this parent thing was seated in there, Tiki, is for, hey, Curtis is unavailable right now, so we need someone to patch up Frank. And we have that little moment of hey, is it ethical for us to save his life? What? Why is there a conversation here?
Right.
So all of that is ridiculous. I think I'm just about done with battle scores here. Let's see. Oh yeah, to hit the point we've been hammering for the whole time. One quick line here, then we'll just move on. So Netflix, I learned this. And I told you about this. It's good on the record here for posterity's sake. Is that I learned that Netflix, ever since the Marvel Netflix stuff started, Netflix wanted to do 10 episodes for all the Netflix shows. But ABC Studios, who make the Marvel Netflix shows, they wanted 13, I think, for like a syndication rule of television and such. Well, this is the very beginning of things. And they just kind of stuck with it. And I hear now with Iron Fist, we're going to change that, but for season 2. But for the longest time, that's why Punisher is kind of stuck at 13 episodes instead of at least 10. We're getting 10 or lower is probably where they, at the very least 10. I know Tiki's a huge champion of 9 episodes, but it's
9 because you get the 3-act structure, man.
And you're not wrong. I'm just saying, again, I think Stranger Reasons season 2 demonstrates like the 9-episode thing where like, yeah, we get 9 episodes that does all you need to do and more technically because we have an episode left over we don't need.
Right.
But you see what I mean though. But yeah, it's like basically the 8 to 10 window is kind of what we need to hit, specifically 9 to 10.
Sure.
I think that's it's about that's. Real quick, one thing. I think it might be another sympathetic thing. Real quick, we have some strange edits between story and sex scenes.
Yeah, sure, I could see that. I'm not as strongly like, yes, I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I can see it. Now
and it's the weird thing because in the Punisher comics we have that in there. We do have like sex scenes in the Punisher comics, but I just feel like they were ill-timed in the editing stages a couple times. Like, okay, Medallion Russo are getting down to business, and then cut to Punisher dying on a table. It just feels like, okay, I'm not like, again, they made it really work in episode 12 where again he's being killed and he's remembering his wife. Like that's a perfect example.
12 is fantastic. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's a perfect example of how you juxtapose like kind of the romance with the violence, and then that was beautiful. I was like, oh my god, that was so well directed. I love it. Again, 12, 13, and 1 are some of the best, and 10 are some of the best episodes off the top of my head. But okay, anyway, that's all I got for those are the main battle scars. Again, Punisher it's just things are present, but they're not necessarily things that they don't. They're present problems. They're not like a laundry list of problems,
All right. Okay, let's move on to Skull-worthy moments.
Here are the best highlights of the best highlights, folks. Tiki, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've already been over a bunch of these, but of course we have the Russo face smash. That's probably the highlight of the whole season. That's pretty much the thing that the season builds up to.
That's a Steven Zurich special, smashing his face into the mirror of the carousel that was the birthplace of the Punisher. His family was killed on this thing. And now it's the perfect punishment where he's like saying, hey, he's punishing him by like, hey, you're gonna live with all the pain that I've endured. Like you're not gonna get killed easy. Like he offered. I love that he offered to kill Frank as a friendship, offer friendship in the previous episode. Now Frank won't do that for him because no, you're gonna suffer for all the pain that you've caused me, and you've lost your thing that made you special to Butte. I'm taking away everything that you thought made you special. It's like, oh my god, it's so perfect. That's a Steven Zurich signature, man. That's like a Punisher. It's a Kingpin moment right there for the Punisher. I love it. Yeah. The torture scene we already kind of highlighted. The torture scene was so well edited with the whole flashbacks to Maria and Frank's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The Punisher montage at the top of the season was great. Killing Rollins, I love that each episode kept getting more and more violent, and by episode 12 and 13, we get the most violent things in the season with the death of Rollins and the creation of Jigsaw. The Nightmare sequence in 3 a.m. we just keep cutting between him waking up at 3 a.m. and then Nightmare smashing the wall.
Oh, that's
Nightmare,
good. That's good.
Smashing the Thanksgiving scene. You remember the Thanksgiving bit?
Yes, I do.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. When I was rewatching, I was like, oh my god, that Thanksgiving with all the falling little turkey hands and Micro's family, his family's there, and just he's helpless at all the soldiers. Kill his family, and just because they'll cite our love of Jessica Jones here, the sandwich gag was pretty funny.
Right.
The fact that Micro made that sandwich and didn't offer.
Did you make one for me?
I thought you liked those, like the ready military meals, essentially. It's like, I thought you liked those. Okay, so I think that's all. Those are the kind of the big ones.
Okay, cool. Nice economic use of time there. All right, let's get to crosshairs and crossovers.
Let's fire through these.
Well, I'm Turk Barrett.
Love me. I love how Turk Barrett was in Tiki. I was so nervous, simultaneously nervous and excited because I love Turk Barrett. I love when he shows up. And I was so happy that he did not get killed off because I was so afraid Punisher was going to kill Turk Barrett.
Oh man.
I'm always terrified that Turk Barrett's going to get killed because I never want him to get killed because he's like the running gag in the comics and therefore he should be the running gag in the Netflix shows.
Uh, uh,
And officially, we'll see with Iron Fist season 2. If hopefully with Iron Fist season 2, they'll make it true that he's appeared in all the Netflix shows.
right, right.
Once that happens, he will have appeared in all the Netflix shows.
Of course, we do have a lack of Claire that we explained.
We have we have a lot of Daredevil characters. We have Karen. We have Brett Mahoney, the officer who was introduced in the Punisher. Well, who we saw in the Punisher kerfuffle of season 2 as well, and Ellison, good old Ellison, Jeffrey Cantor. Let's see, the micro disc, which of course was the Kandahar footage that we seeded from Daredevil season 2. Punisher's van, got a lot of van action. Could have been more like, kind of weapony, but still van action. Ran over some guys. We didn't forget about. I love that we didn't forget about Colonel Schoonover, Clancy Brown's character, because I was worried they were going to forget about him this season. Like, we can't get him back, but no, they got him back, and they even they chopped off his hand. They shot off his hand like we established in Daredevil. Like they did their homework with him. I like that. Micro and Punisher sharing a base with a cache of weapons. It's a Punisher staple. Punisher's killed the last of the Dogs of Hell, the Cartel, the Irish. He's killed everybody who was responsible that we set up in Daredevil. The skull motif. We build up the skull yet again, where he burns it in fire, and then it's in concrete in the marketing, and he spray paints it on the suit. We set up Jigsaw with the mirror because we kept seeing shattered mirrors in the beginning of the season. We paid that off by the end. See Russo's mother, the Butte nickname. Pete Castiglione actually is reference to Frank has Italian roots. His family is from Sicily. Well, fun fact. Welcome back, Frank. Great line. Again, the line of the most famous Punisher comic ever made. Welcome back, Frank is what the line at the end of the first episode. Curtis was a small-time villain in the original comics. The Punisher, that's where they kind of pulled him from. Let me see if I can get the important ones here. Let me just see if I can get. Punisher's hanging around Queens, which is a Spider-Man reference. The locations that basically the setting of this season is around Queens for the majority of it, which of course is where Spider-Man is. And the last important one here. This is all post Defenders, by the way. They confirmed this is all after Defenders. It's not like simultaneously or everything is after all that stuff happened. We see Stanley as a Marine poster. He's only like a Marine recruitment poster, and big setup for season 2. Because not only did we set up Jigsaw, the big setup of season 2 with Billy Russo. If he wakes up, he's going to be all disfigured and everything, just like Jigsaw. And we set up the Ganucci crime family. The mob that he killed off in the first episode is the big mob force that Frank Castle goes up against in Welcome Back, Frank the Comics. So those guys might be coming back next season. And I can't. There's stuff I don't want to give away. Let's just say I think the Netflix shows might reflect this. But that's all I'm going to say on that. There are a lot of other fun little things. I think we hit all the. Last important one. The pinball machine. They referenced the Punisher toy in this season, which was fantastic. Where there's this Marvel Legends Punisher toy where like the Punisher comes with an accessory of like a guy killed in a pinball machine, and we saw this season he killed a guy and he shoved him in a pinball machine, just like the action figure, which is hilarious. All right. Final entry.
Yes. Hey, Dragon, like I said, I feel like I've kind of said my piece on this show. It's got a lot of good parts to it. And honestly, I feel like it's a lot of good Punisher short stories, but at the end of the day, the narrative doesn't really blend well into each other. I feel like that's the perfect way to put it. I couldn't have said it better myself. In talking through it, I don't think I struggled as much to come up with points as I did. So, I'll give myself a little pat on the back there. There were some points I struggled with, but the points I struggled with, I kind of warned you I was going to struggle with. So,
Madani's mother.
Well, no, I'm more talking about not having a lot to say about Russo.
I know, I'm just going to point it out again, like, that Madani's mother.
So yeah, I think it's a good season. It's probably the one that I'm least compelled to rewatch out of all the Marvel Netflix stuff. And I only say that because Iron Fist, I love a good train wreck. But overall, it's well produced, it's well made. It's not really my taste. It's not really my thing. I'd much rather watch something like Punisher Warzone or even Punisher 2004. Honestly, that's Punisher 2004. I feel like is really underrated, but that's a whole different story. Um, but it's a good entry. It's just not my thing.
All right. Well, for me, I really think this season, this series, I guess, going forward, because again, we are getting a season 2 of this. I really think it's representative of the Punisher in a good and a bad way, where the Punisher in itself is an acquired taste, But again, the Punisher on his own, the Punisher when he shows up and things is always great. That's the thing with the characters. He's a fantastic guest star because he's so extreme. He's a perfect kind of like counterpoint. Like I would love it. Again, I'd love it if like in the future of Marvel Netflix, if we saw him cross over Luke Cage, that'd be hilarious. Like he tries to kill this guy, and all the bullets bounce off. That'd be fantastic. It's just he's an acquired taste, but I think the way they did it here. It was true to the books. It was true like the diehard, kind of those Punisher comics, like Garth Ennis Punisher. I've always said like John Byrne, like he looks like the John Romita Jr. Punisher come to life as a drawing. I always loved that about that character. It's well executed. It's brought to life in a way that honors the Punisher. But again, Punisher alone on his own in that world of the Punisher, it definitely better itself with shorter seasons. Which again, after Iron Fist season 2, I mean, fingers crossed, it might get shorter Netflix seasons. Who knows?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it drifted with those subplots. I'd hope in the future it could be a little bit more focused, and again, either shorter in the seasons or shorter on the subplots. One of the two. But at least there wasn't a moment in the series where I wasn't. Again, for me, I wasn't invested. A moment where I was not invested in Frank, or I didn't read it as like Punisher wouldn't do that. I didn't have a moment like that through the show. Like that's so untrue to that character. It's like no, that's what that character would do. It's like that's the character's universe that I'm familiar with the stories that I have read, with kind of what we saw in Daredevil season 2. It felt consistent. It felt like, okay, we're building the universe of this character, and I was excited about that. It's and again, like I feel just the complaints that you hear about it, and again, if it's not everybody's cup of tea, or again with the pacing, in general, again, not in a negative way, just those the feelings that people have on it. It's indicative of the fact that again, Punisher is, as I say, he's a fantastic guest star and great in shorter arcs. That's kind of what that character is. He's a fantastic guest star, like guest arc, if you will. I feel as a Punisher show did its job and it continued that arc well and that story well. And I definitely want to see more from this character, but I'm not in a huge rush for it. Like let it take its time and figure itself out. So I'm not in a rush for it, but I would like to know that the Punisher's coming. He'll be back, and that'll be nice.
All right. Well, folks, war's over, but I think we all know the Punisher's war is just getting started. Right now, he's waiting in the van down by the river, but he'll be back next season, not with a vengeance, but with enough punishment for everyone. See you then.
Welcome back, Frank.
Madani's mother!